In 16th century Stratford-upon-Avon, the Latin tutor William Shakespeare becomes enchanted by the beauty of Agnes Hathaway. They fall in love, which leads to their marriage and 3 children. As Shakespeare pursues a theatre career in London, poor Agnes raises the children largely on her own. And one day, a plague takes away their son Hamnet. Thus, the film Hamnet is the symbol of tragedy that fictionally explored that collective grief leads to producing one of Shakespeare's greatest and most influential play, Hamlet. Hey everyone, the Dark Knaik is here. If Hamnet is still in your watch list, but you are the audience of literature and time, I advise you not to confuse by questioning whether Hamnet advocates the authenticity or the actual lives of William Shakespeare and Agnes Hathaway due to multiple reasons. One is that you will watch Agnes more than Shakespeare in the film, and there is not much information available about her life. 2. Hamnet is based on Maggie O'Farrell's award-winning novel with the same title. And the novel is a work of historical fiction that imagines how Shakespeare might have drawn inspiration for Hamlet from the death of his son, Hamnet. The novel also focuses on Mother Agnes' intense grief over her child's passing. Therefore, the value of reading and watching Hamlet has one factor in common: understanding the after effects of grief that shakes the distant relation of the couples. Although the film takes considerable time in killing Hamnet because of the amount of time heavily invested on Shakespeare and Agnes' relationship, I'm unsure if the novel demanded the narrative to be the same way because I haven't read it. A very important detail that weighs Hamnet's narrative value is recognizing a profound dedication of Agnes Hathaway. Being the wife of the world-famous playwright meant that much of her own life went unnoticed, undocumented, or insufficiently researched. Hamnet as a film, as well as a novel, builds the case of a wife whose husband left her to work in faraway London for a lengthy period, and of a mother who raised 3 children in his absence and suffered the unbearable loss of her son. Like I mentioned before, Hamnet heavily invested the time on the relationship of William Shakespeare and Agnes Hathaway. Although Hamnet could have stretched over Hamnet's tragic death and dramatizing their grief. However, the careful development of their characters in the first half establishes a strong and convincing reason for why William Shakespeare chose to leave his family and pursue work in London. He believed that writing would build his name, but noise of his family life was a distraction. One of the strongest scenes in Hamlet portrays him losing his temper over losing his way to write the play that wakes up the baby. This is why Shakespeare required a space, and his artistry called for opportunities that only London could have provided. Because just like Agnes says to her brother that London is where the whole world gathers, Hamlet offers us a sentimental caricature of the father-son bond. Almost every father feels the pain of living far away from his family. Shakespeare was no exception. The film depicts that he shared a special bond with his son Hamnet. He teaches him sword fighting, and Hamlet becomes upset when he realizes that his father will be leaving soon. But a very important scene surfaces when Shakespeare wishes Hamlet to look after his mother and sisters and be brave. That young boy takes the wish of his father very seriously because he loves him. He loves him so much that when their town suffers from the plague and his sister falls ill, he obeys and comforts her in sickness. And he tells her that he is giving his life to her and will be brave just as father wished him to be. It was a heart-touching moment when father and son exchanged multiple goodbyes from a distance, unaware that it would be the last time they would see each other. Hamlet has been directed by Chloe Zhao and has been very artistic and thoughtful about the film after a terrible decision to do Eternals. There is her mind-blowing piece of work in a sequence when Hamlet falls gravely ill from the plague. While nearing his death, Hamlet envisions himself tearful at a stage of play, repeatedly calling his mom. So he makes a wish to the hawk spirit. Once advised by his mother, Shakespeare sees an eagle as a sign of return. When Hamlet dies, his spectre leaves the stage reflecting on 2 points. First, his exit from the stage confirms his departure. Second, it symbolically suggests the idea of writing about him that will eventually be performed on that very stage, because Hamnet inspired Hamlet. Hamnet has been graced by the outstanding performances of the lead, Paul Mescal and Jessie Buckley. The first half of the film grew their relation and developed their characters. Paul Mescal was amazing when he expresses the writer's block. Observe the emotional breakdown and hand expressions. In Hamlet's second half, watch Paul Mescal when Shakespeare gets angry on the stage actor for not rehearsing his lines properly. He's walking to and fro, visibly grieving and mentally frustrated, and his actor repeatedly mistaking his lines upsets him more. That results in scolding him and speaking his lines in a louder voice with rage. This is a 2-minute, one-shot sequence, and Paul Mescal was mentally brilliant here. Jessie Buckley as Agnes Hathaway is easily the performance of her career. Translating the emotions of soon-to-be mother are fabulous. She is an incredibly tough artist, raising the bar of performance as her character gives birth not once, but twice. This is followed by difficult motherhood when the plague hits the town and affects her children, resulting in Hamlet's death. Her agony and lament will break the hearts. Her relation with Shakespeare becomes strained as she grows increasingly frustrated when he prefers work over his family, even in the midst of tragedy. Agnes has no clue of the stage plays and gets the full exposure when she goes to London to question why the play is named after the deceased kid. Jessie tremendously shows zero understanding towards the theatre's ambience and perfectly depicts how stranger she is to the whole setup. From an angry spectator to the recognition of the play as an emotional tribute to her son, Jessie was sensational in conveying this transformation of emotions. Hamnet is quite rich by its technicalities. I'm glad to see Chloe Zhao returning to her clear vision for blowing the right chords and blessing us with a visually stunning presentation. Terrific performances of Paul Mescal and Jessie Buckley are supported by the soothing musical score of Max Richter. Stratford-upon-Avon, the hometown of both Shakespeare and Agnes, was not used as the filming location for Hamlet. I don't know why. Instead, the historic village of Webley in Herefordshire stood in for 16th century Stratford. I believe this was an excellent choice, as both Stratford and Webley feature cottages and timber-framed buildings with authentic Tudor architecture. I'm not entirely sure about Hamlet's dialogues, as they seemed to follow modern standards, and that's a real mess. When dramatizing centuries-old Britain, dialogue writers often focus on county dialects, but overlook the choice of words and pronunciations. English language in the 16th century was very different from today. I do not expect the dialogue of the film to be Shakespearean, but at least be authentic with time. Take an example of Shakespeare's wife. In the film, it is rightly pronounced Agnes with time, and it is Agnes today. So I don't think the writers worked on archaic words. As far as the film's fidelity to its original source is concerned, well, Maggie O'Farrell, who wrote Hamnet, wrote the screen with Chloe Zhao. So there is no question of fictional liberty if the writer herself is involved with the film. Reading Hamlet and Hamnet are both in my read list. But watching Hamnet deepens a literal and psychological understanding about how writers struggle to bridge the gap between their creative work and family life. Hamnet also shows how the personal tragedy inspires writing, how the intense grief shakes the unshakable bonds. Hamnet is philosophic and carries emotional spectrums. If you understand or have a keen interest in tragic literature or want to observe grief-varying relationship disorder, I recommend watching Hamnet. To be or not to be? That is the question.